Education is what's important. Training, preparation for the expected. Education, preparation for the unexpected.
To all who shall see these presents, greetings. On behalf of Marine Corps University, the Marine Corps University Foundation, and the Krulak Center for Innovation and Future Warfare, welcome back to the Broadcast, our series designed to connect the worlds of the warfighter and PME with the best in innovative and creative thought. I'm your host, Major Nate Janikin, Operations Officer at the Krulak Center. Before we begin, please remember that all opinions expressed here are those of the individual and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Krulak Center, Marine Corps University, the United States Marine Corps, or any other agency of the U.S. government. So NATO was established on 24 August 1949 with 12 original members. Since that time, there have been 10 different additions, bringing the membership to 32 countries. And the newest member is the Kingdom of Sweden, officially as of 7 March 2024. During the Cold War, Sweden remained neutral, but entered a partnership for peace after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And with the Marine Corps' focus on the Pacific, not many Marines have had the opportunity to work with the Swedish military, and so many may not be familiar. This episode will be another in our partnership series, and it's fortuitous that we are joined by two members of the Swedish military, currently attending the Swedish Defence University, and have spent the last week with us here at the Krulak Center. So I'm going to turn it over to you both to introduce yourselves, and Caroline, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much. My name is Caroline Kortegen. I'm a major from the 1st Marine Regiment in Stockholm, Sweden. I would like to start to give my appreciation from my country to United States of America for the security you have been given us during the whole process when we before we were the 32nd member in NATO. And also thank you to the US Marine Corps for having us here. Bear in mind, we're not native speakers, so we will keep up the struggling with some words and try to find them. My background is in the Swedish Marines, the last 25 years. My last posting was commanding a battalion. And before that, I worked as an ADC for our current Supreme Commander. So I've been traveling a lot with him, global and nationally in Sweden. But this is the first time I visit an American base. So I've been visiting you abroad in Iraq, Afghanistan, Mali, Kuwait, but never here. So I've had a great week here. So thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, and I'm Major Henrik Fors of the Swedish Lifeguard Regiment. I belong to the infantry branch of the army and have basically spent my whole career commanding platoon, company, and last year the battalion. I have been active in the beginning in urban warfare battalion, and then changing over to an air mobile battalion. And in the end, I ended up in a motorized rifle battalion, quite similar to your striker battalions or something like
that. So thanks for both of you for joining me this afternoon. I kind of gave you not a lot of choice, but we're here, so I really appreciate it. And I'll be the first to admit that I don't know a ton about the Swedish military or Sweden in general. And I recently learned about Sweden being the country with the most islands. We've just talked about that a few minutes ago off air, but between Finland and Sweden, the number of islands that are on the Baltic is a lot higher than I would have guessed, and possibly a lot of people might have guessed. So I know we're going to open up with a video.
Sweden has joined NATO. We fully support all aspects of the Washington Treaty, as well as the alliance's strategic concept. And we are fully committed to all aspects of collective defense in accordance with Article 5 of the treaty. As a member of NATO, Sweden will maintain and continue to develop our national defense capabilities, now in the context of the alliance. We will continue to integrate with our allies to deter and defend the Euro-Atlantic area. By doing so, we are contributing to the security of not only our part of the world, but also the wider geographical area covered by the treaty. We will maintain a 360-degree perspective on collective security. NATO is not new to the Swedish Armed Forces. We have for decades been training and operating alongside NATO and NATO allies, both in our own backyard and in crisis response operations all over the world. We bring highly capable and interoperable forces to the alliance. We are ready, we are capable, and from this day on, we are NATO.
So I'll turn it over to you both and let you begin.
Yeah, the video you saw, it was recorded a week ago when we, almost on the hour actually, joined NATO finally. And it was a message from our Supreme Commander that things are now changing in Sweden. And that has also impacted our mission, of course, which is now read as defending Sweden, our allies, and our right to live the way we choose. And I will give you a brief run about the Swedish defense, but I will not start in the military part. I will actually start in what we call the total defense. And in Sweden, all the government agencies are to work together to participate in the defense of Sweden. While the military, of course, has the armed part of it, all other government agencies are supposed to work together as well to make sure the society is robust and can handle a possible war. And this picture kind of shows that people from different branches of the government are all working together, and that is that in the event of a crisis, everyone should participate in that.
I just think maybe we can add something about the society. We had a conversation at last night at the hotel. A big difference if you compare Sweden to the United States of America, that the security situation in Europe, the last 2 years has been decreased, and it affects each and every citizen of Sweden. So, and our Supreme Commander, he started this year with actually announcing that we should all be prepared for war, and which made all citizens to make sure you have water, food, supplies, electricities. You need to have the ability to make your own food within your own house for at least 1 week. But it's good if it should be like a month, because the entire society will be more prepared, and that's a big difference. So, and that is a very important discussion to understand the total defense, that no one else will provide your family in case of war with food, water. You need to have a preparation or a readiness within your own to start with. So that's the mindset who is actually very different, because I believe that you are more prepared to go overseas. But when you actually have that in mind within your own house and within your own home with your families, it's like a big change.
Yeah, and I don't think, even in the United States, we haven't had that kind of total war mentality since World War II. And even then, it wasn't prepare for an invasion. It was prepare to support the military as they're overseas. I mean, there were some potential, there were attempts to attack the U.S. Other than Pearl Harbor. The Japanese had planned some attacks on the West Coast, but other than that, there wasn't any real risk to the U.S. homeland. So very different mentality.
Definitely. So the total defense is a very important. We are increasing not only the Swedish armed forces. The total defense, as you mentioned, is a part of it, but that is what is actually going on, because we also have the mentality, maybe 10 or 20 years. If you go back, that we provide peace in Afghanistan, Iraq, Mali, or Kosovo, but we never saw that war was actually an option within Sweden.
And during the Cold War, this was a very big thing in Swedish defense, that we should be able to protect our citizens, and they must participate in this. And it was the responsibility of everyone to do this. And then the Cold War ended, and we did other things, and now we're rebuilding this part of the defense as well, because it's very important when you are close to the enemy. And as you can see in Ukraine, the civilian population is severely affected about the war. But moving on to the actual armed services, I'm going to give you a quick rundown, but the Swedish Army, of course, is maybe the biggest service. It's equipped as a modern force. Main units are the 3 armored or mechanized brigades, and we also have 1 motorized half brigade in the Stockholm area. And they're equipped with, for the mechanized brigades, it's tanks and armored fighting vehicles, similar to your Abrams and Bradleys. And we, of course, also has a lot of like specialist regiments to support the army. We also have a home guard of about 40 battalions. They are equipped like light infantry battalions, and they are used regional, so they to defend important places in their respective region. The Swedish Air Force is mainly equipped with Gripen fighter jets, and for those who like innovation and so on, they are organized in a quite interesting way. Sweden has always been close to Russia, and knowing that the air bases are quite vulnerable for preparatory fires and so on, the Swedish Air Force is designed to be operated from like road strips and so on, with the idea that you have a logistics unit preparing one place, the airplanes coming in, refuel, rearm in about 10-15 minutes, and then they leave that place and the logistics unit moves somewhere else. So when the enemy picks up that, okay, this airbase has been used, we are already moved out from there. And then in that way, moving around to avoid having indirect fires and so on affecting our plans. And then we have
just an add on the Air Force, because when you look at the map in the Arctic, we have Air Force bases in the northern part of both Finland and Sweden that actually will contribute to strengthen the eastern flank of NATO. And it's very important just in that area to actually have big air bases.
And if you're looking into the northern region, the Finnish, Swedish and Norwegian Air Forces are cooperating closely. And the Norwegians are flying the F-35, and they have very different capabilities than the Gripen, so they are doing different things but complement each other very well. And moving on to the Navy.
Yeah, when we're looking at the maritime domain, as we discussed earlier, it's very important to our nation and to our region that we can have open sea traffic, both military and civilian, because all of food supplies within the entire society is mostly on the sea traffic routes. And Sweden has one of the longest coastlines. It's have like 2,700 miles towards the Baltic. And the Baltic region has gained strategic importance due to the trend of polarization in the region. And as we can see here on the slides, it's almost 90% of the trade is shipped by sea. And that's also one of the main tasks within the Navy.
And the Baltic region is also very important and to reach out to other NATO allies, especially in the Baltic states, because that's the way to deploy troops there and sustain them.
Which one is the largest between the Navy, the Army, the Marine Corps?
Ooh.
The Army is the largest one.
If you count like
In
personnel.
Yeah.
The Air Force is more expensive.
And I think the part of the Marine is just, I think you can compare it because I believe that the US Marines are the smallest unit within the state.
So if you ignore Space Force, so
Space
Space
Force.
Force is actually the smallest, then
Okay,
the Marine Corps would be next.
I think it's.
Yeah, and I think the Navy is actually slightly bigger than the Air Force, but it might be either way.
From a defense standpoint, because you were talking about the coastline being the most important and the 90%, does that mean that the Navy is typically, like when it comes to modernization or defense spending, does the Navy get a big portion of that, or is it kind of?
Air
proportionate?
Force first hand, then Navy, then Army. And it's basically because of the idea for Swedish defense has long been to have like a layered defense, because the main problem to handle has been a Soviet Union, later Russian attack across the Baltic Sea into Sweden. And the idea then would be to meet up with the Air Force together with the Navy, and if they couldn't hold, they will at least give time for the Army to move to the right direction, because it's a long coastline and the Army needs time to position them where they need to be.
So we have high technology, I believe, within the Air Force and also in the Navy. But our Achilles heel is that we are few in the number. So few platforms and we are small. Sweden is a country, we are like approximately 10 million citizens. If you compare it, it's difficult. You can't compare that to United States of America. But
350 million. Yeah.
But we have really good equipment. Like the Gripen fighter is state of the art, but it's built for Swedish conditions, because we don't have the problem that you have, that you need to build equipment used around the globe.
Right.
But we can make it specifically for Swedish conditions. It also means our U-boats are really, really good in the Baltic Sea.
The submarines.
Yeah, they're really good for that. But maybe not as useful in other places. But that really gives us an edge against an adversary who can't specifically build their equipment and organization for the Baltic Sea region.
Okay.
And I think that's actually something we are very humble, of course, but we are like, it's the armed forces is custom made for our conditions. So hopefully, and we really believe that we can contribute to NATO with those kind of skills.
Is the equipment you have then, since you were talking about the Gripen being really ideal for the Swedish kind of environment, is all of your equipment made in Sweden, or is it purchased all over and then modified?
Both of it. Sweden has a strong defense industry. So for the Army, for example, our armored fighting vehicles are built in Sweden to Swedish specifications. Our tanks are Leopard 2 tanks from Germany, but modified in Sweden. And most of our Navy equipment, I think, is Swedish.
Yes, definitely.
Not really anyone else really builds that kind of equipment except Finland. And Air Force, the Gripen fighters is of course Swedish, but our helicopters are mostly Black Hawks, and we also use C-130s transport planes.
Okay.
So it's a mix.
And if we can turn to the next thing, you actually answers your question a bit, because the operational environment This is a map of all you can see the sea traffic routes we have Sweden, and we were discussing how many islands we have and the depth of the Baltic Sea. And the submarines, they are custom made to actually have the opportunity and be able to operate in these kind of waters, and the different levels of like salt within different areas within the Baltics, and how you can use that for like own advantage or not. And also with the coastal corvettes, the Navy vessels, they are quite small, but to be able to actually go from harbor to the Baltics and use the archipelago with more than 200,000 islands, you can't have bigger ship like that.
And the idea for the Swedish defense against the coastal invasion has always been to use Army, Navy, and Air Force together. It's a highly developed idea of Gripen fighters can fire anti-ship missiles together with the corvettes and so on to together overwhelm the enemy defenses.
Joint operations. So
yeah, we don't conduct much operations with like single service. It's always joint operations.
And I feel like for us, so the Army and the Air Force typically stay together, you know, with ties back to the U.S. Army Air Corps and then the Air Force, so they typically work well together. And the Navy and the Marine Corps obviously work pretty well together. You know, and then putting those together usually takes a little bit of effort, but you know, we can get things going pretty good. So it sounds like you guys are just doing stuff together just all the time.
Yeah, but your Navy has their own airplanes and so on, which
Right.
we don't have.
So all of your aircraft are operated by the Air Force then, or is the
Yes.
helicopters part of
Even
the
the helicopters.
helicopters? Okay. Yeah, that's definitely different from us. Yeah. In terms of like terrain, so I've done some stuff like planning for Norway, and I know there's that one main road up the coast that, you know, depending on what time of year it is either usable or not usable. Does Sweden suffer from the same kind of movement north to south then?
We have better possibilities to move north and south in direction because we have more roads, but there are limitations. And if moving in a west-east direction, for example, from Norway into Sweden, there are not that many roads, especially not in the northern part of Sweden. So there are limitations, and there might be needing like one-way traffic and so on. And there's a long way to drive to the next road.
But that's a very good question, and we are discussing it within Sweden, because not only the armed forces here is actually join NATO, and within the host nation support, the roads and the infrastructure to be able to have movements of different troops or logistics, it's crucial to conduct operations.
And back to the advantages of the total defense, that the rest of the government are also thinking about these things and improving roads and so on that are needed for the defense of Sweden, and to move allies through Sweden to the Baltics or whatever.
So I was going to ask, so talking about the total defense force, and then Caroline, earlier you were talking about, you know, that everybody preparing for war. What does it look like? You know, so at 18 years old, I'm required to sign up for selective service. You know, so if they ever did the draft again in the States, you know, my name is in the draft list. What are kind of the expectations in Sweden in terms of military service?
Historically, we've had compulsory military service for men from 18 years old. We started with that in like 1901. And in 2010, we dropped that and went to a full volunteer enlisted force with part-time and full-time soldiers. But the changing security situation in Europe has turned that back again. So since 2017, we have conscription again, but now it's gender neutral, so both males and females. And we now have both of these systems together. So we have full-time listed personnel, we have part-time, and we have conscript units. And conscription has like kind of a bad reputation or something like that. And I would actually disagree with that because I play a lot of war games, and conscript is usually like the worst rating you could have. But if you take 1 platoon company, all of them goes in together, they share their experiences, you can train them together, and if you have motivated soldiers, they're doing really good and they're really professional. And we train our conscripts for about a year. It depends a bit depending on your assignment. And after that, they leave the military service, but could be called back again if something happens, or if they need to retrain, which is usually done after a few years. And I have commanded, one of the best platoons I commanded has been a conscript platoon, and they were really, really good.
Is the attitude towards conscription, because you were talking, I agree. I think when someone says the word conscript, you automatically think like not great. But is the attitude towards that compulsory military service, is it generally like well regarded in Sweden? Like, is it, I don't know if excited would be the word, but is it? Yeah.
Can I get out? This is a picture of my conscripts, and this was my last posting before I went to Swedish Defence University. And I actually told them or asked them question on how do their attitude towards actually do the compulsory or mandatory conscription. And they were actually super proud, considering the security situation in Europe, to have the ability to do something important. And since we have the number of conscripts every year is approximately 5,000 this year, and it will increase. And not all their friends are chosen to do the military service. So they actually felt a little bit special. And none of them actually felt that they tried to just get out and be. They were actually super proud. And I believe the attitude in the society has changed. That's something old, because it is a lot of pride to actually contribute to security, to safe environment in the society. And I had like prejudice that young Swedes would actually don't want to do the service. And I was so wrong. It was like the opposite. They were super engaged to contribute.
So if not all their friends were joining, it's a compulsory subscription, what are they doing?
Studying, traveling, or like do something for themselves that they want to achieve, like a personal goal.
During the Cold War, at least in the middle of it, almost like every male 18-year-old did compulsory service. Now the Swedish armed forces has downscaled a lot, but we also included girls. So we have like the double amount of people for a lot less of assignments. So not everyone is doing service. In fact, I would say it's like somewhere in between, up to 10% maybe. So we have a lot more people that want to do than really can do. So there is a bit of a competition to get places. Of course, there are some people who are maybe changed their mind and don't really want to do, and they have to stay anyway. And that's usually people chosen because of special skills or something that we need. But there is a strong will to defend the country, and considering the situation with security in Europe, people feel that they really need to do something to protect their country. So,
do the conscripts go to like specific types of units? Because you talked about, you have specialist units. Are there units that will never see conscripts? Do the conscripts go to specific places?
Yeah, for example, our special forces, they never see conscripts because they recruit from officers or soldiers who are enlisted. But most of the regiments actually have conscripts.
You could basically say, for example, in the army, in a brigade, the first battalion would consist of enlisted soldiers with like maybe one company full-time and then part-time soldiers. And then the second and third battalion would be conscript soldiers. And also in specialist regiments and so on, use conscripts. It's about the same proportion. Okay, as well.
When you say part-time soldiers, how often are they doing soldier?
Very different. Some of them are actually doing a lot of service, almost full-time, and some of them are doing less. It depends on their assignments and so on.
Are there bits, so the description makes me sound, so we have the reserves here. that
You
has-
could
has a-
probably,
Yeah, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year is the minimum, but they can do way more than that depending on their job. So is it sort of similar to that?
it's about that.
Okay,
Yes.
so they have jobs outside of.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
or go to university or something like that.
Do people often switch between I think I remember you guys said that you were conscripted before, so you experienced the conscription
Yeah.
process.
Mhm.
Is it folks kind of switch back and forth between them often, or?
The usual, you really can't get a job as a full-time soldier without a conscript background. Because when you're employed as a full-time soldier, you're supposed to know the basic soldiering skills and so on. And a lot of like full-time soldiers, when they do something, they find another job, but they stay as part-time soldiers.
Okay,
And if we employ soldiers, they will be employed for approximately 10 or 12 years because we want, if we want to keep them within the armed forces, we want to educate them. And you can't stay as a soldier for like 40 years, and what are they supposed to do afterwards? So it's not good for the individuals or not the society. So we would like them to educate.
Yeah, and soldiers that want to stay longer, they need to apply for like officer training or something. Then they can of course stay.
okay.
Mm.
Yeah, I think, for us, it's generally, folks go 20 years is the, hey, you've done full-time in 20 years and you can retire. But I don't know what it is in the other services, but in the Marine Corps, the vast majority of the Marine Corps are Lance Corporals and below on their very first enlistment. And the enlistments are typically 4 to 5 years. And most of them get out after that point. And we get a, brand new set, all the time. So it's interesting to hear the kind of the differences between the two.
Okay, we have different vessels and we have also different tasks. And we saw the tasks on the slides before. The main types of naval operation, it's like sea surveillance operations, establish and recognize maritime picture, and act against threats to our territorial integrity. Sea traffic protection operations to ensure safe sea traffic and freedom of movement. Coastal defense operations will defend Swedish territory against attacks from the sea. And those who conduct it, the naval warfare units, we have the sea surveillance corporations, they're constantly ongoing with the purpose of maintaining our national territorial integrity, together with the air defense, as we were discussing before, and also the submarine warfare, the mine clearance, the EOD, the reconnaissance and the intelligence gathering, and of course the maritime rescue. And they work 24/7, entire year around in all weather conditions.
And it's worth mentioning that the mine clearance and the EOD, they're doing a lot of mine clearance of old mines from the World War II and so on. So they have a lot of experience in that.
So they're still clearing mines from World War
Oh,
II.
yes, they are.
Every now and then something appears in the Baltic and they are on call.
Yes, so several times a year.
Yeah.
So you don't know what's on the
There
bottom of
are
the Baltics.
parts of the Baltic Sea, which are like marked like don't use fishnets here and so on.
So there's areas of France that you're still not allowed, you're not supposed to go into. They just evacuated a base for a very short time out in Okinawa because they found a unexploded ordnance in Okinawa. That's just incredible to me that we laid or dropped so much stuff that people are still having to work to.
And after World War II, for example, Russia dumped a lot of ammunition into the Baltic Sea. And no one cleared that until the Baltic countries got independent. So we have supported them a lot with that.
Is there a Coast Guard in Sweden, or is it generally the Navy is doing the role of, so here in the States, we have the Coast Guard, which does more law enforcement, and the Navy is defense, and the two typically do not mix.
Yeah, we have the same, that there's a separate Coast Guard. They're doing law enforcement and environmental protection. But in case of war, they will be subordinated to the Navy.
Yeah, it's the same for our Coast Guard as well. Yeah.
And in my opinion, we have a close cooperation with the Coast Guard.
And the Coast Guard also has a lot of airplanes and so on for surveillance. So they are very useful for the Navy.
Yeah, I think most of our Coast Guard, they do have some surveillance, but most of it is maritime rescue. It's mostly aircraft in the Coast Guard. Yeah, it's interesting.
So true. So I'm sorry that I rushed through the pictures. Maybe we have a cooperation and a movie.
Yeah.
Oh, the Marine Corps. I can talk about
the Marine Corps
Marines.
first.
Oh, yes. We have two regiments, one on the east side and one on the west coast. And of course, we operate in littorals and acts as the link between naval and army units. We have a depth within the archipelago, 200,000 islands, and we have small combat boats to be able to. All our artillery are on the crafts.
Yeah, basically, your whole battalion is on boats, so you
key.
can move it.
Yes.
All of it.
So the artillery piece never comes off the boat, or it comes ashore?
It comes ashore now, but it will be on the craft in the very near future.
So, yeah, so, you know, the Marine Corps right now with the shift to the Pacific is focusing on kind of that first island chain around the South China Sea. So, you know, we're calling it the tyranny of distance, you know, between islands. How do we sense? How do we shoot? How do we support and supply those Marines? It sounds like it's similar but different, just based on the number of islands.
There's unlimited places where the Marines can go in Sweden, and it's all from very, very small islands to quite large. And of course, Gotland is in the middle of it as well. That's actually so big island, so there's army units there.
Right.
But the rest of the archipelago is the Marines' responsibility.
And we have a lot to learn from each other, how you conduct operations here and how we conduct operations within the archipelago. So now I can continue with the cooperation with you as Marine Corps, because we have had since 2018 an Operation Archipelago Endeavor together with US Marine Corps. So last year, 350 Marines were welcomed to the 1st Marine Regiment, and we conducted an exercise together to learn from each other. And I know that you have a movie to show the audience.
The aim with the Archipelago Endeavor 23 is to enhance interoperability, both strategic and tactical cooperation between Swedish and US Marines. We have conducted shore defense missions with the Hellfires. We have conducted radar missions. We have conducted UAS missions and raids, along with reconnaissance.
One of the most unique portions of this exercise is the fact that we're fighting in an archipelago, an island chain, as well as just testing what we call the kill chain. So how we can find a target, see the target, confirm that with our higher headquarters, and if we have to, then we can prosecute the target and then check to see what our effects on target are.
Quebec uniform. This is Reaper 1, radio check over.
The two things that I personally bring from the exercise is, first of all, the great camaraderie between our two Marine Corps, but also the ability to conduct complex multi-domain operations together.
The cooperation has worked out really, really well. We have an ocean between us, but we do things really similar and we don't need much pre-training. We just get right into it.
It's important to exercise together because we may be operating together. That's, I think, the first and foremost reason, right? Like, the world is very chaotic. A lot of things are always changing. So it's good to be able to know that, like, our allies that we have entrusted to each other politically, they can also trust each other tactically on the ground.
It is important to exercise together because we utilize each other's experiences throughout the years and we learn very much from each other. And we become more dangerous and stronger together.
I think the thing that jumped out to me the most on that video is the boats, with the ramp on the boats. Listening to you talk about how quick I'm imagining somebody driving up to one of the small islands, hopping out with a land-based Hellfire, setting them up, and then being able to depart almost immediately after you fire the shot. That was good and interesting.
But it definitely is, and I think that's the strength within the Swedish Marines, that that's the way we conduct operations in the archipelago. And I also think the comment from the American Marine that we agree strategically and politically, and I think it's crucial to have the camaraderie and the trust between the brothers and sisters on the tactical level to actually have faith in each other when you conduct operations together.
And you got to be in the archipelago in August as well.
But it's the best time to be in the archipelago. So of course you're more than welcome whenever.
When we talk about training, I'm going to focus on the Marine Corps real quick. Just with all those small islands, how low do you typically, like when you're doing training, like what's the expectation? Can you just take a squad, put them on a boat, and say drive to that island, and here's your plan? Like, is there an expectation that you could completely do that?
Yes, definitely. And I think we're talking about like mission type orders. So, or if you say, I don't know, the mission command, because you take culture within the Swedish Marines is that what your commander wants to conduct. And the commander has faith and believe in you as a squad leader, a platoon leader, a company commander, or a battalion commander. You know exactly what to do. And I believe I, as a conscript, was in charge of like 2 combat boats with conscripts on. We were all conscripts, and we had our task, we had our gear, we had our Marines, and we could conduct operations within our response square. And I think also that's actually maybe that's a big difference between us, even though we have a lot of similarities.
And the same goes for the rest of the armed services in Sweden, that the responsibility is pushed to a very low level. And even with conscripts, it works perfectly.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if the word that you use for conscripts in Swedish, does it translate directly to conscripts? Because the more you're both talking about it, it's like, this does, in my mind, these do not sound like conscripts, like at all.
No, It's but maybe we can say Marines, because when they are doing their conscripts, it's I believe they take a lot of responsibility, not in the beginning, because and the combat boat drivers, for example, it takes approximately 15 months to get get the skills, to have the ability to navigate in full speed in all weather conditions, in all seasons. So if you compare, so 15 months, so that's not, you will not do it, of course, the first weeks or the first 6 months.
But I think, and it's similar in the army, like we expect that people will work independently towards the common goal. And we take 18-year-old boys and girls, we make them soldiers, but we expect that they should be independent as well. And it works. They will rise to the occasion, and they're doing really good.
And one reason for that is that we were discussing the numbers and the low tech or high tech. We expect our enemy or opponent, we expect to fight like a high tech, that they will have the advantage when it comes to technology. And we always train as we are, we have like the plan B. What if the navigation goes down, the GPS goes down, if we can't communicate? Okay, I have to know my task, you have to know your task. My platoon, company, or squad, they need to know their task. So when we drop or have no communication, we can continue to move forward. We know what to do and we can act.
And we also know that we will always be outnumbered if facing Russia. And that means that we have to be faster than them. And that means that you can't wait and ask for orders all the time. You have to know what is the mission, what's the goal, and work towards that on your own level.
So again, I think that feeds into my next question. Then, we talked about Gripen, we talked about Leopard 2, talking about, always assuming that you're going to be the lower tech side in a conflict. Is Sweden in the process of, Leopard 2 and Gripen are pretty, relatively high tech.
Yeah. We have very good equipment, but for example, we expect to work in a environment where radius doesn't work, for example, because our adversary has stronger electronic warfare assets than we do. So we have good equipment, but maybe you can't ask your battalion commander what to do when things have changed. So as a company commander, you have to be able to take that decision on the spot instead.
So we have high tech. We practice and train high tech, but we also practice and train low tech, because that will not stop us if we are jammed or...
If the technology is in some way degraded, we still need to be able to solve our tasks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think now that you're a part of NATO, do you imagine that there's going to be any large shifts in how you equip, how you train, or maybe how you organize the services now that you're a part of NATO? Or is the expectation, do you think, is just going to be continue to modernize, to stay on par, but kind of training and organization are going to remain largely the same?
For the Navy, they are almost fully integrated how they conduct operations and the procedures. So, and I believe it's the exact same for the Air Force. And when it comes to the Army, we have conduct operation within the NATO framework for decades. So, and when we went to Afghanistan, Kosovo, or Mali was UN, but we have a lot of experience of conducting operation within the NATO framework. So
I think, and this is of course my opinion, that but at the tactical level, there's not that much need to change. But at higher levels, of course, we have to integrate within NATO, and that will mean a lot of change in how things are done. But I think the tactical level, they are pretty well integrated already, so there won't be that much change. We have been in partnership for peace for, I think it's 25 years or something.
Since the collapse of the Cold War, I think 1994 is what I read, the Partnership of Peace.
30 years.
I guess my next question would be is why did we wait from 1994 to 2020? I understand the impetus on the reason why they pushed to become NATO because of the war in Ukraine, but why was there such a long delay between the two?
Political decisions and the idea that Sweden has been neutral for a very long time. We stayed out of war for almost 200 years, which is quite amazing considering we're living close to Russia. But invasion of Ukraine really flipped everything over. And it didn't take a long time after that until Sweden applied for NATO membership.
Yeah, it felt like it was between both Sweden and Finland,
Yeah.
not necessarily immediately, but it did seem like it was a pretty quick shift from, hey, we're not joining NATO to, we would like to be members of NATO.
Yeah, and it was really like the debate in Sweden turned immediately but then the political process took a while until actually, and there was a lot of coordination with Finland as well. So
yeah, and then having to wait. I think the longest part of the wait was waiting for some other folks to say, hey, yes, please join. And we'll keep it at that.
I agree on that comment, sir.
So we're coming up on our hour, which I didn't even realize until I looked at the time. It's been super interesting just listening to how everything's set up, equipment and the different problem sets that you have to address.
On the behalf of Sweden and the Swedish Armed Forces and the 1st Marine Regiment and of course Swedish Defence University, but foremost the Armed Forces in Sweden. So again, I would like to thank the United States for the guarantees with the security during the process before we were finally members within NATO. It has actually meant a lot to us, and we know that you will be there. So thank you so much for that. And for me, thank you, Krulak Center, and thank you, Major Nate, for having us here and taking so good care of us. It's been an amazing week.
I will just add to that we've been working with you and other NATO members for a long time now, and it's good to finally be part of the team fully.
Yeah, we're excited to have an opportunity to have you guys visit longer than just, the whole conference. 93 folks from the Swedish University were here a few weeks ago. So, it was great to be able to have that interaction. But between the two of you and then the two that are coming later in April, I'm excited to have the opportunity to kind of discuss and compare. Henny, you and I were talking about the differences, similarities in wargaming, and I'm glad that you got the opportunity to see some of the wargaming. You'll definitely have to have conversations with the next set because they're going to see a very different war game in April, 2 of them actually. So it'll be good. So I'm super excited that you guys were here and glad you were able to take away a lot. So Caroline, Henning, thank you for your time and your insight. Thank you to those who have listened or watched so far. That's all we have for this episode. So go ahead and carry out the plan of the day.
Thanks for joining us. As always, we depend on support and feedback from the Team Krulak community to constantly improve our offerings and reach a wider audience. So if you have feedback on this episode, please take a moment to fill out the survey linked in the show notes to help us do better. Also, if you have enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel on YouTube or leave us a review on the podcast app of your choice. It truly does help us reach a wider audience. Thank you as always for your support, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Education is what's important. Training, preparation for the expected. Education, preparation for the unexpected.